Huey P. Newton, right? Or a Bobby Seale, H-Rap Brown.
Be anywhere, but when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am.
I love talking about Black conversations, Black empowerment, and from just being exposed to those type of conversations, those people, like, do you see my afro? Do you see her natural hair, his natural hair? From seeing power, I think that impacted how we see ourselves.
One of the lies that we tell ourselves is that we are making progress. We tend to equate progress with concessions. We can no longer make that mistake. See, it's no in between. You're either free or you're a slave. There's no such thing as second-class citizenship. But a lot of you running around talking about you Democrats, and the Democrats got you in the biggest trick going. When Black people become serious about the revolutionary struggle that they are caught up in, whether they recognize it or not, when they begin to go down and knock off people who are oppressing them, that's when the revolutionary struggle unfolds. Not until.
Well, we're here to educate, regulate, and demonstrate. Educate the youth, regulate the truth, and demonstrate the proof. And family, I got a very special guest in the building with me today. I got my brother Caleb of Milli Productions. Me and my brother Caleb go back a couple years now. When I've gone out to the Atlanta, Georgia area, me and him have always linked up in his studio to do the work. You know, I was with him when he was downtown, and then now he's a little bit more up north, would you say?
Yeah, like towards Midtown almost.
Okay, yeah. So definitely. So, you know, my affiliation with my brother has definitely come from the perspective of this work, family, this grassroots work in the Black community. We're always here to spread the knowledge. My brother has a plethora of guests on his podcast himself that he has accumulated over the years and just has been giving the people so much information. So I definitely commend you on that, my brother. So it's definitely an honor to have you on my podcast now. So we're here to definitely spread the revolution throughout all the different apparatuses that we can. So family, sit back. You about to get schooled, family. My brother Caleb, break it down to the family real quick, who you are, what you represent.
Yes, sir. Most definitely. Peace, family. My name is Caleb Smith. I'm Atlanta native. I'm a creative journalist, production studio owner. So I love to create content, tell our stories, tell Black stories through the power of media. That's something that's always been a passion of mine. That's been my background in school, everything. So I think media is the past, it's the present, and the future. It controls our minds. It controls how we feel about ourselves, how we see the world. So I take that responsibility very seriously. So by me even feeling that passion, I make sure that it's my duty for millennials, Gen Z, and future younger people to always understand who our elders are, their works, and even people that's our age or just a little bit older or younger that's doing great work for our people and by our people. So, you know, through media, through my platform, through Milli Productions, it is to inspire and educate our people, and especially our young people, for sure.
When we're talking about media and we're talking about, you know, the different ways that in this generation in 2024, we can get information, we can get our messages across to the masses of people. And then when we look at the 60s, the revolution of, you know, the civil rights, and we look at all the different groups and specifically honing in on the Black Panther Party. How do you think media affected how the Black Panther Party operated in the 60s?
That's a great question. I mean, even like when we see people like Huey P. Newton, right, or a Bobby Seale, H-Rap Brown, Eldridge Cleaver, like when we see all of these people, even seeing clips about them talking about Black is beautiful, and like, do you see my afro? Do you see her natural hair, his natural hair? From seeing power, I think that impacted how we see ourselves. And I think that that's what makes media so poignant. And then from the Black Panther Party, especially, like till this day, hey, Rue, like, as you know, you're deeply inspired by them. Myself as well, because of seeing those images, from seeing those pictures, from seeing those videos, from hearing those conversations by the elders. And I think that if we weren't able to see that on tape, that adds a whole different type of flavor to it, because that's proof. You know, from hearing stories, people can sometimes fabricate stories, as we know, like playing telephone as kids. If I say, hey, Rue, tell them at 5 o'clock we're going to play outside. By the time you tell the 10th person, they might tell them it's going to be 7 o'clock at a whole different location. But seeing something on video, on tape, that's irrefutable. And it's like, damn, that happened. So yeah, man, I think that them even having like their own radio shows back then, which is like equivalent to them having like their own podcast during this current time, was very thought provoking, very revolutionary. So I just think, man, everything from the Black Panther Party that we see as well with the free school lunch and just so many other things, they were just ahead of their time. And the media component is the most important. And even recently, when we saw Judas and the Black Messiah, that's media, and that's inspired by the Black Panther Party. So I think that if we just implement those same ideas of understanding the cameras that we have, the microphones that we have, that is the same as you walking around with a gun and atomic bomb. You just have to use it correctly, but it can most definitely do damage in a actual positive way towards white supremacy and tearing down all of those different infrastructures and things of that sort, for sure.
Definitely. And then just like even what you're doing and everything as it relates to the podcast that you're producing through Milli Productions, and also the fact that you have a whole space that people can also rent out, people can utilize that for their events, and you as well have events in addition to your podcast at the location that you have. So it definitely is just a blessing to see a lot of the entities that, you know, our ancestors would, you know, imagine if they could have had the way that we have podcasts nowadays. Imagine if the Black Panthers, you know, when we look at even like John Lennon had his own show where he brought on Bobby Seale, right? So even when we look at some of the people back in the day, they, you know, a lot of people try to chalk it up as John Lennon was killed by a crazed fan, but John Lennon, you know, he saw, you know, the revolution. People like Marlon Brando from The Godfather saw the revolution. These individuals saw the revolution and wanted to be a part of it, even though they weren't of the culture, of the background. But they understood, you know, in their own ways, and they used every sort of media to get their message across. You know, whether they used award shows, whether they used their own platforms to showcase all of this, it was just a blessing in disguise. And like you're saying, because we can see it, a lot of the archives are now coming to fruition, you know, that we're seeing all of the different things and just the correlation. Looking at your journey and looking at your path to where you're at now, what started the creation of Milli Productions?
Yeah, man, I would just say that real like maturation process started in college for sure. My minor is in African-American studies, and your father, we've actually had these conversations right now. In January, I'll be starting back. I'm in grad school and, you know, starting in the master's program, PhD program after that, because I love history. And now I love mixing media with history. So by me being exposed to that at Georgia State in Atlanta, being from Atlanta, it was just a very Black experience. So, you know, always being taught things, I would make sure even back then on the school radio station having a blue pill pull up. So I just, man, I loved talking about Black conversations, Black empowerment. And from just being exposed to those type of conversations, those people at a young age in college, I knew, man, after college, of course, you know, having offers to do like traditional news, but I knew that, as you know, hey, Rue, you can get canceled very quickly. And I knew that to me, if it's not owning that content, if it's not owning those conversations and not being to be able to be free to have those conversations, you can only go so far. And I wasn't willing to change how I looked, how I dressed, how I talked, how I carry myself, just to have a certain job. And honestly, even in journalism, some of those jobs aren't even safe that people consider to be safe jobs. So after college, you know, just from having time, I knew that, man, I kind of want to start on my own platform. And, you know, just gradually, just from, you know, being around here in Atlanta, you know, I just started it. But, you know, at first I interned at a podcast studio. It was Black owned throughout my junior and senior year of college. And, you know, seeing that, shout out to my man H, of seeing him run his own studio space, that inspired me. And, you know, he would have me operate things on my own from like day to day. So from there, that just gave me like ownership and showing me how to run things, how to talk to people, how to connect with people, how to have a person, like if somebody's in the city trying to find a DJ, how to get them, you know, connected to certain people, photographers, videographers. So then, man, I knew like once I walked across that stage, if I could do that for somebody else, I could do that for myself for sure. So yeah, man, after school, shout out to Sid, you got to have a great woman by your side, man. And she would constantly just plug me in and say, hey, Caleb, you could do this for yourself. Do it for yourself. So yeah, man, a few months after graduation, we started 3 Milli Productions, and it started with me, 2 of my friends from college. So 3 Milli was short for 3 Millennials. And I hated that name, Hey Roo. I thought it was so corny. I hated it. I didn't even come up with the name. One of my friends did, but you know, we just stuck with it. And COVID struck. So when COVID struck, I graduated in 2019. COVID had struck, of course, in 2020. During that time, my friends who I had initially started with, they kind of started falling off with the work. They weren't as inspired. So then I was like, all right, I might just have to pull this thing by myself. And then Sid, you know, she let me know, hey, you're not by yourself. So from there, we just started going on Instagram Live, screen recording those live conversations, editing it, chopping it up, making it look better, posting that on YouTube all in the same day. So went from doing 1 interview a day to some days I was doing 5 in a day. And, you know, I realized during that moment, of course, during George Floyd, all of that, it was going on and everybody was in the house. So it was like the perfect storm of, for once, Black people weren't distracted. So I knew as a journalist, yo, like you have to maximize on this chance of having real meaningful conversations. So I made sure during those times that I was in college finding self-consciousness of, all right, who was I tuning into? So, of course, it was during the times of the Sinetta videos where, you know, you're being exposed to Dr. Kaba, a red pill, a blue pill. So I made sure that, hey, if I learn from these individuals, I would love to have a conversation from a younger person's mindset perspective that's a millennial / Gen Zer, and basically having this platform so people who look like me, the same age as me, we can learn from our elders, from our master teachers. So I made sure, man, I put all of that onus on myself of having those meaningful conversations. So it started during COVID, and then, man, from there, we just kept building and kept growing gradually.
Much respect, much respect. And I actually learned something because, to be honest, I was going to ask you the 3 Milli in that particular, like what that meant. Because I swear, every time I think about, you know, I think of 3 million, I think of money.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm thinking. But for now, sure, when you said millennials, it definitely makes sense. And also, when people see it, that even if they think of money, the fact that that's what they thought of, it draws them to want to know more, to ask you, hey, there's 3 Milli. Is that a correlation to money? Or, you know, right. And it's always good to have conversation starters, like in schools when you have icebreakers. Come on, it might be the 9th grade, your first year of high school, that, you know, to get to know each other, you might have to have some icebreakers. So it's just good that you can have the icebreaker without it even having to be like necessarily told as an icebreaker, because off rip, people hear 3 Milli, you know, Milli, we think of money, we think of million, you know, so exactly. And Lil Wayne song, a Milli. So we're just accustomed to hearing that Milli, so we think of money. But then because of what you're bringing is even more in depth. So they're like, oh, yeah. Because just off rip, people might not necessarily think millennial, the abbreviation for it would be Milli, right? Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So it definitely puts it in perspective, and it definitely, like I said, starts a more deeper conversation. And then people say, well, my brother, I would like to invest. And, you know, that's all it really takes is people seeing what you're doing, seeing the motivation behind what you're doing, and say, I'm going to do what needs to be done to support that brother. So definitely much respect to what you're doing and everything.
Thank you. Thank you.
Why is journalism so important to Black revolutionary media?
Man, that is a great and a powerful question, because I don't think people like understand when we talk about Ida B. Wells, right? She was a journalist, right? Even when, I mean, we think about W.E.B. Du Bois, of course, he was like very controversial, but everything that he did, it was centered around writing and research. And journalists are so important, especially when it comes towards Black revolution, because somebody has to document what is going on. And I think it's the same as having scribes in ancient Kemet. Somebody had to write, somebody had to document. And I think that that's arguably one of the most, if not the most important role, even when we're tuning into our favorite documentaries, our favorite books. That's somebody journaling. That's somebody writing down. Here's what's going on. This is what's going on during this time. The Black Panther Party, somebody had to press record on that camera, hey, Ru, and say, okay, I need to ask this question, or I need to film this. I need to capture this. Because our conversations, this conversation and so many others, especially important conversations, are being archived. And who knows, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, especially with everything being all digital, somebody can stumble along, our people, hundreds of years later, and be like, oh, so that's what they were talking about. That's what they were thinking. Okay, so how can we make this better? How can we add this? How can we take away from this? Ancient Kemet on those walls of everything being written down, everything being drawn. And I know that they, of course, had intentions of us seeing these things. But like, imagine 10,000 plus years ago, writing something down, and the same people who come from you are reading those things, studying those things. And man, I think from us having these great conversations and us writing things down, us filming these things, who's to say 10,000 years later that we'll have our same people studying these things, so then they can better push forward our agenda, what they have going on for the overall growth of our people. So man, I think that that's what makes media so cool, so important. Hidden colors. I know that you probably hear this all the time when people come up to you and your father, oh, that changed my life. But that's journalism. Your father, his books. Hey, Ru, what you do when you press record, when you're filming, that's so important, because somebody needs to see all of those webinars. Somebody needs to see all of those documentaries, everything that you do. So filming is so important, man, because that can last the test of time. And now, of course, as we know, people's attention spans is way shorter. So filming those conversations, that's even more important, because now people are always consuming video content. So yeah, man, I just think that what we are doing, that's going to truly stand the test of time. Not all the crazy foolishness that we see all the time on the timelines. Those are all fads, but meaningful conversations, that's always going to last.
Definitely, definitely. And I feel like, just this conversation in and of itself, when a lot of our historians, a lot of our elders look back on what they did, they necessarily didn't think in the moment how powerful it might have been for the future generation for 20, 30 years down the line. When Malcolm, when Martin, when Huey, when Panthers started doing what they were doing, they weren't necessarily thinking, oh, everything I'm doing right now is going to have all of this big impact 30, 40, 50 years from now. But it just shows you how powerful we are as a people, because at the end of the day, no matter if our leaders get killed young, old, or whether they're not killed, whether they just pass of old age, whatever the case may be, the legacy lives on and it lives forever. And the work that you're doing, like Renaud, documenting the history through different avenues. You have sit-down interviews in your studio. You have interviews like we're doing now over a computer. So there's many different ways to talk to people and get the message across. It just depends on how, where the person's at in their life. If they can pull up on you in Atlanta, Georgia, they can get that in-studio interview. If they might be, let's say, where I'm at in Seattle, then it has to be done over live. But then, like we know, if I'm ever in Atlanta, I pull up to the studio and we get that work done. So it's an everlasting effect for us and for the future youth and the future people that are going to come before us. So that definitely puts it in perspective that everything we're doing is in our ancestors' name.
Come on. Yes, sir.
What is the importance of Black ownership amongst news media?
Man, control, hey, Ru, that is so important, because we've seen it. We've seen it so many times. We've seen it happen to a Nick Cannon, right? To where he's not doing anything harmful and he's having powerful Black conversations. But the moment that it gets too Black, it gets too powerful, too informational, it has to get shut down. And I think by us owning our own infrastructure, even if it's at a smaller level, mid-level, high level, we have to own what we are producing. We have to own our content. Content is where it's at today. That's why every major publication or every major network has a plus, whether it's Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, all of them are posting on YouTube, because that's where it's at. So for us as the people that's actually creating all of these trends, creating all of this content, we have to own it. It's the same as the music industry 50, 60, 70 years ago. You know, during that time, not too many people knew about owning their masters and things like that until years later, and they realized, damn, I got played. So now we have to learn from our previous elders' mistakes, our ancestors' mistakes of, okay, how do we own this stuff out the gate? Because as you know, we are very creative people. We are the most creative people. So we have to have creative control when it comes to the type of conversations that we want to have, who we would like to have on our platforms. Because as we know, once you start having certain people on, that's when they try to start shutting you down. So for our job is, okay, how do we learn how to basically protect ourselves, even if something gets shut down on YouTube? How do I migrate that audience towards my own platform, my own website? And having that control is just so important, because then we can move freely, because freedom, that's the most important aspect for our people, especially here in America as well. It's just having that freedom, whether that's creatively, financially, but especially as a creative, man, because all of our ideas change the world. And if we don't own these ideas, if we don't own where we're filming at or our equipment, any of that stuff, we don't truly have control. And if you don't have control, then somebody else, they will be controlling you. And at the end of the day, man, that's not going to be a good effect on our people. And honestly, too, man, hey, Rue, our people have to see that, because once our kids start seeing ownership, our siblings, even our parents, that inspires us as a whole to start owning everything around us and to start thinking about ownership and about actual Black freedom. And I think that that comes through especially our content and our media. So whether that's owning our own studio spaces, our own production companies, all of those things. So then we can truly move freely and produce the best content as possible. So then you don't have to worry about, damn, is this going to get shut down? Am I going to get canceled? Having those thoughts, I think, affects how we start creating certain things, how we even ask certain questions of being afraid of being canceled. And you never want to feel that way at all. And, you know, I think that that's why we start seeing degenerate behavior on social media, because that's what's getting pushed, because that's what's getting funded. However, those people that are selling out and doing all of that foolishness, they're doing all of that, but they don't own any of that. And in the next 5-10 years, they'll get thrown away for somebody new, somebody younger. And then now you just out on the street, but you've already done all this damage. You've already lost all the respect. So it's like, was it really worth all of that? So owning everything around you, or just owning something, is so important.
Yes, yes. Ownership is key. You know, everything like our brother Nipsey was pushing forth. And then when we look at, you know, the ultimate demise with our brother, we see that, you know, him pushing that representation is what put him in that position. Mm-hmm. So when we just look at it from that perspective, we understand that, you know, ownership is what they're after. Yes. Is what we're after, but they're after us when we about that ownership lifestyle. So exactly. Just understanding all those different things that they put, you know, towards us to try to go against what we're doing, we're always 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of the game. So it just puts it in just, you know, a certain light that, you know, they can, in regards to that word light, they can never dim our light. You know, right. They try to do all these things. They try to attack us and do all these things that they try to do to stop the Black man, the Black woman, especially the Black family, the Black man, Black woman coming together. So it's just interesting to see that the times that we're in and what's going to be for the future. So I definitely think that everything that you're doing is definitely
thank you, bro,
in a clear perspective. And then let's talk about the home base. The home base is Atlanta, Georgia, my brother.
Yes.
We all know that Atlanta is predominantly heavily Black, you know, all different areas, Black businesses, Black people, you know, it's just so refreshing, you know, being here in Seattle, you know, predominantly white, and then going to places in the South, going to Atlanta, you know, Alabama, Mississippi, you know, Louisiana, just being able to see, you know, all of the Black people and all of the Black people doing something, because like you were saying, when you turn the TV on, all they have is these negative stereotypes of what Black people are doing. But then when you actually go to these areas, you realize, no, it is a very bustling area that Black people have those businesses that when we look at Black Wall Street, you know, they have the new Black Wall Street, you know, in and around the Atlanta area. So just from your perspective, being in Atlanta and just, you know, having a base there with your 3 Milli Productions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you view Atlanta as the new Mecca for Black Americans?
I do, man. I do. And I think that Atlanta has held that legacy, man, for over 100 years, 100 plus, man. And, you know, currently we are filming a doc on Alonzo Herndon. Alonzo Herndon is one of the first Black millionaires, right? And here in Atlanta, man, you talking about this one individual was so wealthy that he was one of the main reasons why we had a whole race massacre that happened here in 1906, because he was making so much money. And not only him, but Auburn Avenue as a whole. So I think that especially Black people, which you and your father, y'all have covered thoroughly. He showed me all the research that you've done, Heru, which was so impressive, man. But yeah, man, like Auburn Avenue, that is basically what started this entire idea of Atlanta being this Black Mecca. And I think when you think about Auburn Avenue, where this is the same district that gives you a Martin Luther King, this is the same district that gives you a Maynard Jackson, which is the first Black mayor, John Wesley Dobbs, you know, here in Atlanta, all of these things got cultivated in one specific part of Atlanta, which then spreads out. And of course, when we start thinking about culture, when we think about HBCUs, we think about the AUC, think about a Morehouse, a Spelman, Clark Atlanta, Morris Brown. Even, man, when you think about sports, like Deion Sanders, when he was down here, and you think about all that flavor that he had when he played for the Falcons, when he played for the Braves, you think about, for me as a kid, Mike Vick, he was our favorite athlete. He was the face of the Black quarterback. So it's just something about Atlanta, Heru, that just makes it special. Southern hospitality is just huge for us. Everybody's super nice. All of us love on each other. Of course, no city is perfect, but overall, Atlanta is just like cousins, basically, where it's like 6 degrees of separation. Somebody's related to somebody, somebody knows this person through that person, and all it takes is 2 or 3 calls. But yeah, man, it's just from being from Atlanta, my parents being from Atlanta, it's just a very special place where you grow up seeing Black excellence. You grow up seeing Black people, my parents, you know, seeing them working great jobs, great careers, of knowing that we don't feel inferior at all. You know, like when we see white people, we don't walk around with our heads down. We don't feel afraid. We don't feel inadequate, because sometimes our parents have more money than the white people that you see. So Atlanta is just a very special place, man. And I think that for any visitor who comes down here, make this a second home for you. Even if you want to buy property out here, do something in Atlanta, because I'm telling you, man, Atlanta is going to continue changing the world. And I think our generation especially, because I think our level of pride, of consciousness, and fearlessness is a little different. And I know that we will keep pushing that bar forward, whether that's through entrepreneurship, whether that's just from group economics. I think that this is just a very special place where at a young age, Black children see Black people in positions of power. We see Black people doing important things. And also, Heru, it can get very dangerous too, because sometimes you can start creating that boule class where people start feeling elite, and those people try to start separating themselves. So it, for me, is a very fine line of truly understanding, okay, I can still be successful. I can still be in these powerful positions, but how do I still keep a Black mind and not start changing on my people? So I think that that's what we have to do, and make sure that that doesn't happen here in Atlanta, of Black people starting to separate themselves, which has happened a lot. So of just keeping it true, authentic. But I know for a fact Atlanta is the Black Mecca, but it's not the only Black Mecca. So I never want for us to start getting arrogant and thinking that this is the only spot and the only epitome of Blackness. You know, as you know, you still got Harlem, you still got Houston, you still got Dallas, you still got LA. You got so many Black cities, Chicago, all throughout, man. So I just think if we use Atlanta as one of those hot spots for us to just start creating our own network amongst each other. But I know for sure it is the Black Mecca. It's a very special place. The history is so rich. The spirit is rich. Like when you come down here, I already know, like you just feel super Black. You feel powerful. You feel loved. You feel welcome. So I just think that we just have to learn how to replicate what we've done here and start doing that all throughout the country as well.
Yes, sir. Most definitely. And it's just interesting that, you know, everything that we're saying we want to see, we're making it happen. And that's the thing about it. When Black Wall Street, you know, when the conversation around it resurged because of just things that were going on television and things like that, and people started talking back up about Black Wall Street, and then we see the new Black Wall Street out there in Stonecrest, Georgia, and then it just, you know, everybody's wanting to create the new Black, you know, Mecca, and like you're saying, we should just all come together and it just be one, because, you know, like Harlem, when we look at all these different places, LA, Chicago, and Houston. All of these different places are its own Black Mecca. You know, when you go to these places, they have their own historic value as it relates to the contributions that Black Americans have contributed to that city, to that state. And, you know, just looking at the whole United States, to the whole entire country, we are that foundation that has built the base of everything that we see today. And we're still doing it. You know, like I said before, while you know, when white people steal some of our ideas, we on our 5th, 6th, 7th idea by the time they got that idea that they stole from us. So I think that just puts it in just a holistic perspective that, you know, the time is here. The time is now. You know, when people talk about we'll see, time will tell. No, time is telling right now. We're seeing everything happen live, you know. And with all these reality shows and with all of these movies and stuff, no, we are living in the actual reality. Some of the stuff we're seeing seems to be somewhat of a simulation. You know, they're simulating certain things when we look at COVID, when we look at the vaccine, when we look at all of these things that they pushed in front of us to simulate a certain society that they want to see for the people, to see how many people will do this, see how many people will do that. Just figuring out population control, just all these different things that we're seeing, you know, and at the end of the day, they can't stop what we're doing. They can't stop any of those things. You know, they can maybe pause it for a moment. They can maybe put up some roadblocks. They can try to, you know, take us out, you know, with police brutality, white supremacist activity, all of these different things. But the thing about it is that we still here and we're still thriving. And that's the key to it all. You know, we're always going to find ourselves in situations that we're going to have to overcome. But at the end of the day, we overcome them all. We overcome one of the most inhumane atrocities known, you know, to man, known to woman, known to any human being as it relates to the enslavement process. And we're still here and we're still thriving, you know. I don't know if any other group of people could have gone through what we went through and still be here to this day.
Ooh. Hey, Ru, listen, man, on that same standpoint, I think especially like here in the South, you know, people, when they always think about Atlanta, excuse me, people always think about this like metro city, you know, it's a city. But once you go outside of 285, it's very rural. And just even people that's from Atlanta, that's natives. We have grandparents that's from the countryside of Georgia. And these are the same people that's seen things from the Klan, that's seen lynchings. And all of these things are still so prevalent. Even if you go in South Georgia, North Georgia, you'll start seeing plantations, Confederate flags. So with that point, like what you just said, that says so much about our people that everybody didn't go up north. Everybody didn't run from the South. So of having certain people that still stayed in the South, and still fought through it and still stayed. And all the people that went up north and still came down to the South during those summer months, our people are special. And for our people to have gone through what we went through and to still stay, and like what you said, to not only stay, but to thrive, especially in a very southern city like in Atlanta, where it's still the South, it's still southern. You still got redneck stuff all throughout the state, man. So for our people to still have a safe haven for Black people all throughout the world, and especially America, to still be located in the deep South, that speaks volumes about our people for sure.
So family, what a wonderful way to wrap it up. But before we go, family, my brother Caleb, is there anything else that you would like to let the people know? Any other gems you want to drop on them? And also, once you say what you got to say, let the people know your Instagram, your contact. They want to book you for an event that they want to do down in Atlanta at your space.
Yeah.
Floor is yours,
for sure, man. Lasting words, keep going. That is the biggest thing for our people, our generation especially, is to stay on your grind, keep going, stay dedicated. I know in life, everybody has ebbs and flows. You have obstacles, but use those times, man, to keep working on yourself and keep going. And understand that we aren't doing all of this work solely for ourselves. The same way that we have ancestors that we've never met, but their spirit, their blood still drives through us. It's the same way, man. So we are doing this for our great, great, great grandkids that we'll never see. What type of world are we trying to leave from them? And we just can't go through the motions and just, you know, say, what was me, or not think black first. Because if you don't, our people, they will have no future. So if it wasn't the people that came before us and laid down that foundation, like what you speak of, hey, Ru, we will have no grounds to stand upon. So we have to understand, even if nobody will ever know your name in the history books, we have a lot of work to do, and we aren't doing this solely for ourselves. So yeah, man, and especially through media. So take control of what you consume, what you produce as part of your diet, and make sure that everything is clean for yourself. Of course, have balance, but understand that you have to have a purpose with that balance. But you guys, y'all can follow my studio page at 3 Milli Productions. So that's the number 3, MILLI Productions. You can follow my podcast at 3 Milli Pod, and you can follow my personal page at 3 Milli Caleb. So y'all can always hit us up. If you want to book the space for events or for production shoot needs, y'all can DM us on Instagram. And also you can text us directly at 470-231-5267. Again, 470-231-5267. So we would love to connect with you all, make great things happen, and help you unleash your creative genius through the studio. So, man, it's always an honor to connect with good people. Hey, Ru, I don't take being on your platform lightly, so I appreciate it greatly, brother, and I had a blast.
Yes, sir. No doubt, my brother. Always, just like you always invite me on your platform. It's reciprocated, my brother.
Yes, sir.
So, yes. So, you know, we always pushing the movement. So, family, this has been another wonderful episode of Power to the Panthers podcast. My brother Caleb, I thank you once again for blessing the platform. And family, connect with my brother. If you want to rent his space out in the Atlanta, Georgia area, definitely do that. If you want to any other venture that you would like to discuss with my brother Caleb, please hit him up on Instagram, 3 Milli Productions. So family, like I said, it's been another wonderful episode. And like we usually do at this time, Huey, take us away.
It will notify Jensen in particular, who's the superior there. He has to make the decision for the trial to be tried or not, and he's an elected official, and so this will be a warning to him that if he goes on with this miscarriage of justice, that our next petitions will be our vote in the ballot box when he comes up for election to vote him out of office.
Thanks for watching. This episode of Power to the Panthers podcast has been brought to you by Panther Prince Productions.